Sarah Pidgeon. Sarah Pidgeon had a great 2024. She was in the Tony Award-winning play Stereophonic. She had previously had gigs on Gotham, a recurring role on the streaming series The Wilds. Sarah was officially a working actor. Life was looking up for the Carnegie Mellon grad. Little did she know that it would be her portrayal of a 1990s New York woman who rarely spoke to the press, but somehow symbolized a moment in time that would be a real breakthrough role for her. Sarah played Carolyn Bessette in the Hulu FX series Love Story, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. It's a story about a young man who grew up in the limelight and a woman who had to fight for her privacy, autonomy, and love. Her portrayal of Bessette has earned Sarah Pidgeon an Emmy nomination this year, and she joins us in studio. It's nice to meet you, Sarah.
Likewise. So happy to be here.
You went to Carnegie Mellon.
I did.
Famous school for actors, Leslie Odom Jr., Josh Gad, Holly Hunter, the whole batch.
There's a pretty amazing alumni network.
So what did you want to study?
You know, I think it sort of came... I got clarity on what I wanted to pursue when I was in high school. I studied acting at an arts high school, and it was the thing that I had just done as it was my passion. It was my form of self-expression. It was my hobby. And I began to understand when I was towards the end of high school that people pursued a degree in this. I didn't really know that you could get a degree in acting, I think, until I was maybe junior year of high school. And ended up at Carnegie Mellon. It was a wonderful time. I have such dear friends from that program, and it really not only made me, I think, the actor that I am today, but also the person. It was very formative for me.
What was the first role you played and you thought, I can do this?
I was Mother Mary in the preschool nativity play. So that's 3 years
that's
old.
The one.
It was my star turning moment. Yeah, I think I played maybe Jane Eyre. I didn't get into the musical at summer camp, and I got into the repertory theater production, which was a huge blow to my ego, but ultimately I think was set me on the right path. Musical theater performers have such vocal physicality and endurance that I do not particularly possess. But I was Jane in Jane Eyre, and I think that was the first time I really was given material that had so many extremes and so much to play in. It felt very mature. I had a British accent, which I will not do for you today because I don't think it's up to snuff. That's still a work in progress. But I think that's when it really felt like something exciting and something I could sink my teeth into. And from there, I guess that's really when the bug bit.
What is something that you learned while studying at Carnegie Mellon that you still use to this day?
I remember there was some sort of methodology that we were learning. It was a lot about emotional prep and emotional recall. And we were using that in scene study. And I came in and I was very emotional. Tears just streaming down my face. And I finished the scene. I felt really great about it. And my acting teacher said, "Okay, class, what do you think of Sarah's scene?" And no one said anything. And he said, "Okay, anybody? Sarah, how do you think you did?" And I was like, it was very effective. I'm wiping the tears off my face. And he said, "Okay, I think I'll speak for the class." We didn't feel anything. And in that moment, he taught me that just because you are necessarily feeling something does not mean, that's not the point of what you're doing. It's to affect the audience. It's to affect the viewer. And I think sometimes I can tip over into this barometer of like whether or not I'm doing well based off of how it changes me emotionally in a scene, which is not necessarily the end goal. So especially on these long runs of theater,
Sure.
or, it took us about 5 months to film Love Story. I think his voice was very much in my head.
That must have been hard to get over.
I mean, another blow to the ego. Those are my big learning moments. I think it just really recontextualized it all. And my director on Stereophonic, Daniel Ocken, who is so incredible, he also reminded the cast of that when we were about halfway through the run. I think we when you are in a play for so long, you can start sort of overindulging and doing the play for yourself.
Interesting.
I think as a sense of sort of entertainment. And he described it as, think of the play as like an ice cream cone, and you can smell it and you can see it, and it's right up next to your face, but you can't taste it. And that's how you need to approach, approach the scenes and the performance of it all.
My guest is actor Sarah Pidgeon. You may remember her from her Tony-nominated performance in Stereophonic. This year, she's nominated for an Emmy for her portrayal of Carolyn Bessette in FX Hulu's love story about the lives of Bessette and JFK Jr. I understand you used to film your scenes in a bathroom that you used to have.
I think I know what you're talking about. It was my first bathroom.
Yes.
It was my first apartment. And it was very, very tiny.
Where was the apartment, first of all?
It was in Bushwick,
okay.
Stockholm Street, off the DeKalb stop. I'm not going to call it a lovely first apartment. Whose first apartment is lovely? But I wouldn't film them in there, but I would practice them.
Okay.
I mean, the bathroom was just big enough to open it was a skinny little door, and it would back up right into the toilet. And you had about like a 1 square foot of space. And I would sometimes close the toilet seat and sit on it and perform the scenes, my audition scenes for myself. But yeah, I think there's something, the bathrooms, showers, that's where I think you sort of find the answers to a lot of the questions that are bopping around in your head. And it's a place of artistic inspiration for me personally.
What was it about? Was it that you were by yourself?
I think it was about
the sound
myself.
Of the bathroom?
I think it just felt very, very private. And I think it was usually the last place that I was at before I would, it was before COVID. I was doing a lot of auditions. So, it was the hour and a half before I would have to go into the city. And it's very nerve-wracking to audition in front of people still. So I think it was sort of the last place that I could center myself and kind of think about what my offer was in this audition. It was where I would do my makeup and my hair before I would get ready. And so I would just be practicing. And I think some of my best performances were in that bathroom. And then I would get into the audition. And I got the Wilds soon after I graduated the pilot, but there was like a solid year there where I didn't get anything. So it just stayed in the bathroom for a while.
But that was your safe space, it sounded like.
It was. I mean, I think it's funny being in New York. There's so many different places that I've practiced my auditions. I mean, I look absolutely wild just mouthing to myself on the subway and up Fifth Avenue and in parks rolling around and becoming a different character. When you fall in love with it, and then sometimes you never get to do that character again. Yeah. So I guess go big or go home, and there's no place better to do it than a city like New York.
It was kind of interesting for you, though, because you're ready to burst onto the world, and then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. How did you survive as an actor?
Well, I got really lucky. The first season of The Wilds finished shooting. We were shooting in New Zealand. And since I was over in that corner of the world, I thought, this is such a long flight. Maybe I'll go to Vietnam because it's much closer than it would be from the States. And my mom called and she said, Sarah, it was like January, mid-January. She said, I think you should get home. This virus is going pretty crazy. And by the time I got home, a week after I moved into my sublet, the world shut down. So safe to say I was glad I was not traveling abroad.
Yes.
But I'm still wanting to go to Vietnam. But I had beginning of COVID, like everybody, shut down. That was actually when I got the first audition for Stereophonic.
Oh, wow.
It was in a different iteration. And then COVID summer. And The Wilds came out, I think, in December of that year. And by February, we were going back to Australia for the second season. So we got very lucky. We were a COVID production. So that really took me through. And I'm not sure how, I don't think I survived it better than anyone else, except for the fact that I was very, very fortunate that to be one of the few productions that was working.
That's amazing.
So, and it was wonderful to be going back to that cast, familiar faces and some new ones, and to be in Australia as well, which was very obviously different during that time. But once I got back from Australia after that, I mean, the world had sort of adjusted and got back on the audition grind and hoped that something would work out.
Where were you when you were contacted about Love Story?
I got the audition January of 2025. It came through my email, and I think a day or two after, I was at my agent's office taping in the tape room, which is such an incredible. It's a real gift to an actor because I mean, oftentimes I'm taping with my friends in apartments. Some have better setups than others, but lots of our apartments are close to trains, and you can have an amazing take, and it'll get ruined by the C train.
Of course it will.
So,
how was it originally pitched to you, Love Story?
what I found most interesting about it was the log line and the character description was, the intention of the show was to show the moments behind the scenes of, we know their lived experience, parts of their lived experience in these moments in history in this timeline. And based off of the people that we know, what might those conversations have been in their apartment while they were getting to know each other. And the character description of Carolyn was that, she's not the ice queen that the paparazzi made her out to be in the 90s. And I found in those first audition scenes that she, just even on the page, she contained sensitivity and guardedness and was incredibly empathetic and funny and witty and intelligent. And I thought it was, the more I learned about it, I mean, I put it on tape after some in-depth Googles, but that was really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what I was able to learn about her. But I, understanding how she was portrayed in the media, and that the show was interested in exploring the woman that we believe her to be, which I don't think was the story that was told about her back in New York in the 90s.
That was so interesting because I thought a lot of people might have been scared off by the role.
Oh, I totally was terrified.
Yeah, were you?
Yeah.
Why were you scared?
I mean, I think I knew who Carolyn was. I knew her image. I knew that she worked at Calvin Klein. I knew she was married to John. But as well as knowing that she was dearly beloved and people were incredibly protective of her. And I think that even in that beginning dive into research, knowing that she was quite mysterious. She never sat down for an interview. She's very protective of her privacy. And because of that, there's a lot less, not only information about her, but the photos and videos you have of her are mainly that I had access to, paparazzi photos. And you behave very differently when a man that you don't know is following you on the street versus, candid photos with your friends at a birthday party. So I think that's sort of, while I have a lot more clarity and perspective on it now than I did in the moment of going out for Carolyn, I think it was all very daunting to take on a role that, what I would have given to have like 2.5 minutes of her speaking it extemporaneously and seeing how she moved her hands and seeing how she moved her hair out of her face and what her voice really sounded like. It was sort of a mammoth undertaking, I think, in that sense. And I'm so grateful for all of the collaboration that I had on, finding ways into the character of Carolyn and ultimately the collaboration on the show.
Okay, March 2025. This is the headline from Deadline. American Love Story has found its female lead. The first installment of the FX anthology series, which chronicles the whirlwind courtship and marriage of John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette, has tapped Sarah Pidgeon, The Wilds, Tiny Beautiful Things, as Bessette. The casting of JFK Jr. is still underway, with several actors set to test for the role in the coming weeks. What were you hoping for to find in a partner for this role of JFK Jr.?
I think it's the same for every job in a way. Someone that you feel like is interested in telling the same story as you are, interested in being a real teammate, a good hang. Especially with this project, it was very clear to me that I was going to be spending a lot of time with whoever was going to play John. And someone, I guess, specifically of what I wanted and what I was hoping to find in JFK, whoever played JFK Jr., was his charisma, his kindness, his swagger, his ability to to sort of play an everyman, or at least desire to be, that athleticism, sense of political promise. Sort of being very telegenetic. And then Paul Anthony Kelly walked in through the door, and he had all of that in spades.
When was the moment when you thought Paul Anthony Kelly is the right choice? There are many actors who could play that role.
Well, what's so interesting was being on the other side of a chem read for the first time.
Yeah.
I've been in chem reads. I've never gotten a role when I've been auditioning for the chemistry read, which I don't know if that says anything about me. But there were a lot of really talented guys that came in, and there was I found it so interesting because it wasn't, these guys would come into the room and I would have a great time acting with them, but there was just sort of something that it was almost indescribable of, it just didn't quite totally fit, or it wasn't totally him. And I think when Paul walked in, he had that talent, he had that charisma, there was this energy. I think everyone was really excited before he even opened his mouth. He obviously bears a resemblance to John. And I think I've said this in an interview recently. People ask how you build chemistry, and I think that you sort of do have chemistry with everyone. It's just whether or not people want to buy what you're selling them. And I think that when Paul came in, immediately there was a chemistry that worked for the story that we were telling. Both of our energies, I guess, complemented each other, and we made sense together. And then in building chemistry, if it's even possible, we were able. He's the person who understands this experience better than anyone, my experience, and we had something very such a unique experience of making the show together, and we're able to get to know each other as friends and create this bond. And a similar timeline as Carolyn and John, meeting and then spending time together, and just that trust begins to build. Even though I think intrinsically we both had that for each other from the moment we started working together.
I think it makes sense that the actor is Canadian. Truly, because, I met JFK twice.
Really?
And it wasn't every man. Even though he knew you knew who he was, that's the way he behaved, like sort of a little bit of humble. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm John, is how he would introduce himself, right?
Like no introduction.
Right. I know who you are. And I thought that with the actor, with Paul, that he's Canadian, and that sort of softness to the character.
Yeah, he just has this incredible kindness to him, and he's so funny and generous with his time and his spirit. I'm from Michigan, so I really love our northern neighbors.
I'm talking to actor Sarah Pidgeon. This year, she's nominated for an Emmy for her portrayal of Carolyn Bessette in FX Hulu's love story about the lives of Bessette and John F. Kennedy Jr. What characteristics about Carolyn, one that you decided she had to have, or that you heard that she had? Because, like you said, we didn't have that much information about her.
Yeah, there were, while she obviously was very protective of her privacy, and in her passing, the people that knew her and loved her most and best also protected her privacy. So again, there was not a whole lot of information to go on, but from what I was able to glean from certain biographies and interviews that people gave, was that she had this ability to connect with people. You could meet her that night, be a complete stranger. She'd look you in the eye, and it felt like you knew each other for years. She was very physically affectionate. She would hold your hand when she talked to you. She had an ability to laugh. Like, there was always a laugh there. I was surprised to learn that she could cuss like a sailor. There was some story that I read about her going to a hockey game in college, and I don't even know if she'd ever been to a hockey game before, but like that sort of hyped up competitive nature. She was clearly very intelligent. I mean, people spoke about this, her intelligence and her wit. But that was also evident by how quickly she rose in the ranks of Calvin Klein. I thought something that was that showed people talked about her self-confidence, but I think something that illustrated her self-possession and confidence was because how often she was talked about in the press. It's very surprising that she never sat down to set the record straight. And I like to think of her, thinking just let them talk. While I imagine it still weighed on her as we explore in the show, I think there's a real power to one's silence when asked to speak about one's public image. But that was something that really struck a chord, I guess, energetically for me, of thinking about her strength and the ability to back herself and perseverance despite being really at the advent of paparazzi and tabloid culture. And, I think her relationship with John was something maybe she didn't have the perspective, that word again, on what her life might become. I think there was sort of this intuitive sixth sense of what comes with being in this relationship and how her life might change, one that she really carved out for herself.
We'll have more with Sarah Pidgeon after a quick break. This is all of it. You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. My guest is actor Sarah Pidgeon. This year, she's nominated for an Emmy for her portrayal of Carolyn Bessette in the FX Hulu's love story about the lives of Bessette and JFK Jr. This is a portrayal of a real person. These two, they met, they fell in love, they died young. How did you balance your artistic freedom as an actor with fact?
I think that was the line I was constantly trying to walk. Talking about with you earlier of being quite nervous to take on the role because there was so much that was unknown. And I think at times, especially in the discovery phase of prepping for the role and working with a movement coach and doing all this research, I was almost so careful and constantly watching myself. And, as I continued working with my coach, and then as we got further, started production and building trust with the people that were behind the camera, our directors, I was sort of able to take that watchful eye, I think, of making sure that I was doing all the things that I wanted to do to capture what felt most factual, of how she held herself, how she sort of had this energy pouring out of her eyes. And she was a dancer, so she had sort of this.
Oh, interesting.
And you can tell by the way she does her buns. You can tell that she did her hair for dance recitals. But I eventually, I think the thing that terrified me most of feeling like there's sort of this, I think, a general consensus of the public of who Carolyn is, of how she makes us feel. And I was constantly watching myself, not only for the physicality, but hoping that I was kind of striking this right chord of who we think she is in trying to play her. And at a certain point, I gave over to that artistic freedom. I think, feeling like I sort of already have that instinct to watch myself, I think, and sort of course correct while I'm doing something. But that was going to stop me from filling out the rest of the role, which I think that also was what allowed me to make sure it wasn't an impersonation, that it was, I guess, and hopefully an inspired performance, and this iteration of Carolyn of what we might imagine her life would be.
Let's listen to a clip from Love Story. Clearly, the paparazzi has descended upon her, and she isn't quite sure what to do about it. Here she is talking to her sister, Lauren. Lauren is played by Sydney Lemon. Let's listen.
I impose a circus on anyone who comes within 15 feet of me. Where am I supposed to go? I just feel like, for as long as I can remember, I've known exactly who I am and what I want, and now I just feel like paralyzed. I'm terrified of making the wrong move or drawing any more attention to myself.
When you were playing in your portrait of Carolyn Bessette, when is the moment when she realizes what she's gotten herself into?
I think there's a few moments that begin to stack up, but when they come back from their honeymoon and the press is waiting for them at their front door, I think that whether or not intuitively she knew that she was convincing herself of a false reality, that it would die down after they got married, I don't think she understood that it would be just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's so interesting to play a character at the advent of paparazzi culture she had no one to really look up to I think mentor her.
What's so interesting? I got caught between her and the paparazzi once.
Oh my God.
At 60th and 5th Avenue. And I just was like, ho-do-do, coming out of the subway. And she came around the corner. I think she was at Barney's or something. Mm-hmm. And it was unbelievable at that time, the way she was hounded.
It's insane. It's really insane. I mean, I like to our relationship to fame and paparazzi has changed so much. Obviously, everyone has a camera in their pocket now. And actually, I don't even know if our relationship to fame has changed that much. I think there's always been sort of this intrinsic fascination.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think considering how much money those photos could go for at the time.
Yeah.
Because of it being different. I just cannot. I had a slight taste of it while working on the show, of people being very interested in the show. Since we were a New York production, there's a lot of. I mean, it's impossible to shoot without someone looking. And paparazzi would show up, and I just thought about how much it changed me. I could feel my heart start beating faster, and my awareness of being watched. And I just cannot. I guess I did imagine what it was like for her to wake up and try to walk her dog in the morning, or go to Barney's, and be hounded by men that were quite physically daunting and scary
at the time.
At the time, very there was an aggressiveness because of, I guess, feeding that pop culture.
It's so interesting you said that you filmed in New York, because 1990s New York really plays a big part in this series. What do you wish you had experienced about 1990s New York? And then I can tell you about it.
Gosh, yes, I know. I want to hear your stories. Gosh, I think that it's just that you had to be there moment. There was something very ephemeral about the city. And I think that, everything's very documented now. I like that you could sort of have a crazy night. And I like the idea of recounting. I think about when people tell me their stories in the 90s, and I'm like, have you just recounted this and it's gotten more wild with time? Like, has memory done that thing where you've filled out the gaps in it, and just it becomes more outrageous the more you had to be there. And I think there was something I've been turning over in my head a lot, was that the 90s, because there were less television shows, less movies, fewer news channels, just media in general, and our information in general was much narrower. It felt like more was shared, whereas things have, because there's so many corners of the internet, your interests can become quite far apart from you, even your neighbor. And I think that Carolyn and John represented this sort of shared icon, no matter what part of the country you're from or what side of the aisle, even politically, there was this sense that everyone knew who they were. And I think that goes for that sense of community that people had in the 90s, that sense of neighborhood, and where everyone would go out. And now I think it's just become much more individualized. And I guess maybe I long for the anonymity that everyone had. And the spontaneity. You sort of, from what I hear, you had to call 8 friends saying, I'm going to the corner bar, meet me at 7, and maybe 4 would show up.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess I don't miss, but I would long for something like that.
Well, you have some downtime in New York this past summer. What do you do for fun?
Well, I was traveling with my sister for about a week. We went to Copenhagen, which was amazing. Lots of pastries and biking. And I came home and it's been soupy how like hot and humid it is. And then like 6 o'clock rolls around and we've got our summer thunderstorm, daily thunderstorm. But I've been doing all the boring things that I've needed to do, like cleaning my closet and organizing my papers, and then the exciting things of seeing my friends. I've been going to the park a lot.
Yeah.
I went to the North Fork, swam a little bit. I was doing all the catching up because I've been very grateful that this year has been quite busy in comparison to previous years of my life. But it's been really nice to just have like some good quality time with my friends and eat some good food and try and find AC when it's 95 degrees in the city.
My guest has been Sarah Pidgeon. She is Sarah Pidgeon. You can watch her in FX Hulu's Love Story. She's nominated for an Emmy. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.